Hello, hope everyone's doing well. It's Sarah, Mrs. McGrath with Counseling Through the Chaos. I'm back with a new topic, and I'm just going to dive right in because there's really no easy way to do it. So I've had quite a few of my students and even coworkers, parents, pretty much anybody who has heard of COVID-19 or who has been affected by it in some way has felt in some capacity some anxiety and stress, some worry about what is going on in our world right now. So it's been a really, really big topic with my high school students, parents, even for myself, just what I'm feeling, the pressures of, things opening up, and then how's our world gonna look, the pressures of trying to teach my kids at home and see my students still, either by phone or texting, emails, and Zoom, all of these different things that are flying at us. So there's a lot that our body systems are taking in, having to process, and there's a lot of just new unknowns. So anxiety likes to increase when we have that type of perfect storm. Some of us are just we're pre-wired to be more of an anxious or kind of higher kind of sensory input type of personality. For some of us, our families, that's the example that we've had. Someone in our family has really high anxious tendencies, or some obsessive compulsive types of symptoms. So, we all in some way have heard that word anxiety. So I thought this is the perfect time to really talk about this. And so I'm going to start with a story as usual because I love to read. It reaches so many people. And reading is not just for kids. It's a way for adults to communicate and to kind of learn as well. Even my high schoolers enjoy listening to stories. So it's just something that's fun, and it's a really good teaching tool. So if you don't like stories, you probably won't like my site, but that's okay. Hopefully there's some other tools that maybe you can find beneficial. So what I'm going to read today is called The Dark, Dark Night, and it is a Scholastic book. It is by M. Christina Butler and Jane Chapman. Jane Chapman has done a lot of very popular stories that you might know of. So this one's The Dark, Dark Night, and I hope you enjoy. Frog was very excited. All winter he had been asleep under a stone, and now that it was spring, he was on his way back to his pond. On the way, he bumped into Badger and Hedgehog. Then he played leapfrog with Rabbit and Mouse. So Jane Chapman, you might recognize these characters. She writes the Bear series. Bear snores on, and all of those. Bear feels sick. Those Bear's new friend. So Jane Chapman, these are characters from her Bears series as well, so might seem familiar. Suddenly, he saw that it was getting dark, so he borrowed a lantern from Mouse, and off he went through the woods to the pond. Ooh, the wind blew in the trees. Squeak, squeak, went the lantern as it swung from side to side, and the dark was all around. When Frog reached his home, he put the lantern down behind him and was just about to jump into the water when he saw a huge black pond monster with enormous claws coming out of the weeds. Frog grabbed the lantern and hopped as fast as he could back through the woods. "There's a huge monster in the pond," he cried. "Are you sure?" laughed Hedgehog. Frog nodded, trembling. "All right," said Hedgehog calmly. "We'll have to look together." "I'll come too," said Mouse. Off they went through the woods. Ooh, ooh, the wind blew in the trees. Squeak, squeak went the lanterns. "Wait for me," cried Mouse, and the dark was all around. Soon Hedgehog and Frog reached the pond. "Now," said Hedgehog, "where's this monster?" "There it is!" cried Frog. It was bigger than before, with enormous claws and terrible spikes down its back. "Run, run!" cried Hedgehog. "Pond monster! Pond monster!" "What's all this?" chuckled Rabbit. "A monster? There's no such thing as monsters." "Come and see for yourself," said Hedgehog, shivering. "All right," said Rabbit, "I will." "I'll never swim in my pond again," sniffed Frog as they set off through the woods. Ooh, blew the wind in the trees. Squeak, squeak went the lanterns. "Wait for me," cried Mouse. And the dark was all around. It wasn't long before they were back at the pond. Rabbit, Hedgehog, and Frog tiptoed to the water. There it was again, the big pond monster, and it was bigger than ever. It had enormous claws and terrible spikes down its back, 2 big horns, and wildly waving arms. "Run for your life!" yelled Rabbit, racing back through the woods with Hedgehog and Frog close behind. "What's going on?" asked Badger, so they told him all about it. "Come along," Badger said. "I'd like to see this monster of yours." And off they went once more. Ooh, howled the wind. Squeak, squeak went the lanterns. "Wait for me," cried Mouse, and the dark was all around. As they reached the pond, a huge gust of wind came through the trees and blew out all the lanterns. "I can't see a monster," said Badger at last. "That's because it's too dark," whispered Frog. And there they all stood, waiting in the moonlight for something to happen. Just then, Mouse caught up with the others at last. "Yoo-hoo!" she shouted, waving from the bank. Badger, Rabbit, Hedgehog, and Frog looked at Mouse, and then they looked at the small black shape waving from the reeds. "Look at that," said Hedgehog. "That's not a pond monster," said Rabbit. "That's Mouse's shadow," said Frog. "I can't believe it," said Badger. "You were running from your shadows every time." The 4 friends laughed and laughed and laughed. "Hooray!" "Hooray!" cried Frog. "There's no monster after all." And with a huge, happy splash, he leaped into his lovely pond at last. That's the end. Okay, so the dark, dark night. Why did I choose this story to represent discussion about anxiety? Well, because anxiety is a stress response to something that we perceive around us. We perceive it either with one of our five senses. We see something, hear something, taste, touch, or smell something that triggers some type of fear. Now, the fear, it can be real or it can be imagined. It can be something that happened a long time ago that has triggered this response. It could be something right in the moment. It could be something that you are thinking about, that you've heard about. So the thing about anxiety being triggered is it's the perception, the way that the person sees it, senses it as a fear. And so then once we sense a fear, if we do not have really good coping mechanisms or emotional intelligence, emotional self-control, what happens then is we sense the danger, and instead of thinking and processing through what we should do, it immediately goes to the base part of our brain, which I call the lizard brain, because it's very primal. It's a primitive instinct to fight, flight, or freeze. So basically to stay alive. It's a protective mechanism that has been around since our ancestors. So the thing about anxiety is we are triggered, and then because we get in these negative patterns of behavior, we start to avoid, we run away from problems, we get really defensive and, use our fighting words or kick things, or, or we might even just completely just freeze and go into, like, we go in our hoods. I don't know if you've ever seen your students or your kids put up their hood and they go under a desk, or they go and hide. So that's where that's coming from, because we haven't stopped that process of the negative coping skill and introduced a new one to take that over. So in The Dark, Dark Night, it's a really great example in a children's story about how we can perceive something that we don't understand as really scary and terrible. So, obviously when we're reading the story, we see, as the reader, we see the shadow. But this is the way anxiety works, though. Something happens, and at first it's just scary. So at first Frog only saw his shadow, but then when he was afraid, instead of finding out information, instead of trying to problem solve or talk about what was going on, he went and got his friends, and everybody wanted to see, and it just got bigger and bigger. The fear, the anxiety, the worry just grew. It grew and it became very, very scary. So if I just showed you this page, that's a pretty scary picture, but you don't know all the information behind it. So what happens is, Frog even says, "I'm never swimming in that pond again." And that's what happens to us with our anxiety. When we let it get away, when we don't find out more information, or we don't input a new coping skill that is very rational, not irrational. "I'm never swimming in there again. I'm never going back there again." And a lot of times our systems overreact because we want to avoid fear and uncomfort. So what happens is um, they find out, oh, hey, mouse is over there. Look, we see the shadow now. And it's not so scary. We can explain that, or we can work together to figure it out. So that's why I like the story, because that's exactly what happens with our anxiety. If we don't handle it, if we don't find a way to work through the worry, through the fear, to get over that scary moment, or, practice being social when we get very nervous about being social, or practice public speaking when we don't want to public speak because it's terrifying, just things like that. Dropping your child off at school, there's a lot of anxiety there. What if, what if, what if? And the more that you continue to feed into it, the worse it becomes, just like the big giant shadow. So what can we do about anxiety? Well, there's a lot of different things that we can do. One is we have to stop that process of the fear response in our primitive brain. Okay, you need to acknowledge, first of all, that you have some negative coping skills. Okay, and we all do, but realizing it and acknowledging it is really important. So, and even young children can do this. So it's really good to maybe sit down. If you're older, you think about, what are things that make me nervous. Are you more of a social anxiety kind of person? Is it loud noises? Meeting new people? Change? Okay, who likes change? I mean, no one. It's stressful. So maybe test taking is nerve-wracking for you, or speaking and doing a presentation in front of someone. Even just new experiences. Anxiety is a normal thing. It is a normal reaction, and it's meant to actually, well, not anxiety, but fear is a normal reaction to warn us. Warning, 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 danger, danger, danger. Anxiety is what happens whenever we let it get out of control. So we have to rein it back in and tell ourselves we're not in danger, we are safe. This is how I can work through this uncomfortable feeling right now. So identify some of the things that you probably need to work on. What makes me anxious? What makes me nervous? What do I worry about? And then decide, how can I handle this in these different situations? What can I do? So breathing, a lot of times when we are very anxious, we start to breathe up here, and that's when people hyperventilate. So practicing that belly breath, where you're really breathing fully and getting oxygen to your brain, that's very important. Acknowledging how your body changes. Okay, yes, I'm a type of person whose breath goes straight here. I need to acknowledge that. I need to go somewhere and take a moment. Maybe you get sweaty palms, okay? I tend to really get thirsty. My mouth gets so dry when I'm nervous. So I'm always carrying around something to drink, or drinking while I'm talking, with my water. But it's something that I know, and so it's something that I can be aware of. Like before a presentation, I'll put some gum in my mouth, or get a mint or something, and make sure I always have water around me so I can help with that symptom of anxiety. Doing relaxation, where we just take some moments in our day to breathe and just slow down and relax some of the muscles that are in our bodies. We get really tense, and when we get really tense, we're stressed, and that increases anxiety. So breath work, relaxing your muscles, maybe just taking a bath or taking a walk, to get relaxed. Another thing that we can do is work up here on the thought process. A lot of where our runaway worry comes from is the what if, what if, what if, what if. And we work ourselves up into this panic because we keep thinking worst case, worst case. That we have to agree that doing that does not help us problem solve. It does not feel good. And it just makes everything worse. So up here, acknowledging that you have negative thought process. That thought does not help me right now. That thought is very negative. You could say it as a rational versus an irrational thought. Helpful versus hurtful thought. Growing thought, growth mindset. Stuck mindset. So you can use these terms depending on your age or the age of maybe your own child or whoever you're working with, and to help understand that this negative is not okay. We got to shut that negative down, because most of the time the negative thought, the runaway what if worry, is lies. It's not true, and we get stuck, and we get all worked up. So we got to stop for a second. Good or not good? Is this hurtful or helpful right now? If it's hurtful, then I need to change what I'm thinking. And I need to replace it with some better thoughts. So this activity is from therapistaid.com. It talks a lot about deep breathing, muscle relaxation, guided imagery. But it talks a lot here about challenging our irrational, those stuck mindset thoughts. So we want to kind of challenge those thoughts. You could ask yourself, is my thought based on a fact or just how I feel? Something that I ask a lot of people is, would you say that you're telling yourself in your head, would you say that to your friend? Would you say that to someone you care about? Okay? Would this person over here see the situation the same way? Or am I overreacting? How likely is this what if or this fear, how likely is it that it's going to actually happen? Will my fear come true? Could it? Okay? What is most likely to happen? What's most likely to happen in this situation? Okay? And if this fear or if this worry does happen, will it still matter to me a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? So basically, how important really is it? Is it something that I can't handle? Most likely, no. You can handle it. So thinking differently about those situations that we're in. You know, when you have a class test, yeah, it's stressful and we worry that we're going to forget everything. But whenever you do that, you're shutting your brain down. So you're not going to do well and you're not going to perform well anyway. When you go into it with the mindset that I know what I know, I'm going to put it down on paper. It's not going to matter to me in a year. It's not going to matter to me in 2 years. I'm going to do it right now and work through this moment. Okay? So that helps you to rationalize what problems can I solve right now? What problems are really big problems that I need to get help with? Is this helping me? Is this not helping me? So those are some really good questions to ask yourself. Most of the time, we know the answers. It's just things we don't want to deal with. It's things we don't want to go through because it's uncomfortable. And, you know, human beings are meant to feel, and we feel uncomfortable sometimes. So, you know, there are things, though, that you can do to help you feel better once you've worked through that. Taking walks, journaling, drawing. What are things you enjoy? I have a really cute little poster. This came from Teachers Pay Teachers. I'm pretty sure it was a free one. Calming strategies for younger kids. take a break. I tell kids, go walk down the hallway and get a drink of water. Go wash your hands, splash water on your face. Those types of things create new pathways in the brain. So we're lowering our stress level. Breathing, a lot of people, that one doesn't work, but counting backwards, saying your ABCs backwards can help reset your mindset. This is another one. I found this one on, I want to say this one might also be Teachers Pay Teachers. It's the A to Z of coping skills. And there's something for everybody, A to Z. For those who are artistic, painting, the T represents in the alphabet thoughts, negative thoughts to positive thoughts. So it's a really good reminder. Writing down our feelings, voicing what is wrong. Sometimes I have people that I speak to, and sometimes they just need to get it out and they just need to hear it, and they need somebody to validate. Perfect. Now you've got the power. Okay, so think about what helps you. Breathing, asking for help, exercise. Incorporate those things into your day. So basically what you're wanting to do is stop that negative thought process. Stop the negative response for a fear going straight to your lizard or your primitive brain. What we want to do is we want the rest of our brain to work, especially this frontal cortex part, which we call, at the younger levels, we call that our wizard brain. It's magical. We can problem solve and communicate and understand language and regulate our emotions when these parts of our brains are working. If we're stuck down here and we're stressing out, we can't function. Okay? So, let's see. Something you can do, I like to call this a coping plan, it's hard to see this one, but coping plans, some people call them like a safety plan or negative to positive brain plan. Basically, it's just what are things that trigger your stress, write them down. And then what are the things in your body that's telling you, oh man, I'm stressing out, I'm panicking. How do you know? Okay? What helps you to stay safe when you're being triggered? When your body's doing that, I'm being triggered, I'm having a response. What can help me to feel and stay in control and to remind myself that I'm safe? Okay? And basically we write those things down. Think about what happened in the past that you did. Sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's coloring, playing with Legos, just going to a quiet space, being in the dark. In my office, I keep things kind of a lower lighting because I think I've said this before in some of my previous videos that too much bright iridescent light actually overwhelms me and gives me headaches. So that creates stress for me. So I keep more of a dim light. I like colors like purples and things like that to keep me feeling happy. So go someplace that makes you feel safe and comfortable so you can calm down and work through what you're going through. Another thing that I really like to do sometimes is these paint by stickers. It's kind of cool. So some of the ones that I've done, and I'll do these sometimes with my students, do them with my kids, I'll do them on my own. This is a painting, like a little stained glass painting, but it was done with stickers. This is one I finished this week. Yeah, so I'll sit there and I'll do that sometimes just to do something that's calming, relaxing, and it looks pretty. Okay? So, anxiety is a tough one. We all go through it. I know a lot of us are stressing. I know I am definitely having a hard time, struggling at times. I have good days. I have not so good days where I'm feeling overwhelmed by a lot of the pressures around us. But that doesn't mean that I'm weak. Doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you're a human and you're feeling something, and acknowledging it and working through it means that you're building your emotional intelligence. It means that you are being emotionally smart. So don't give up. Maybe try some new strategies that maybe I've mentioned in my video today with you or your child. Or you can mention it to a friend or a coworker or a family member. Just remember that we are all in this together. And again, we're human, we're not perfect. And we can only be the best that we can be right here in this moment. Our minds are meant to grow and learn as long as we're living. And gosh, there's a lot of growing to still do. I know there is for me. So take care. I hope everybody has a really good day, and I will be back soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.